Okay, cool. So it is actually making sounds. That's great. Hello, people. All right, so let's see how many people we have. 11. Awesome. So I'm gonna give it like a minute or two for people to sign on. It looks pretty good. Hello. 12. Yes, more people. Now I'm going to make the visuals for this boring. Can people see the syllabus? Oh wait, no, you can't see the syllabus because I haven't brought it up yet. There it is. It's on the video. Okay, good. Howdy. So, yeah, some of you who are in my capstone course. Yes, round 2. Let's go. Why is it showing? I don't want to look at this view. This view stinks. 1 page. No, damn it. Page width. Fine. Okay. Well, I'm going to get going because it's the first day, and that's usually kind of jam-packed. And I actually want to have content today instead of syllabus day. So, the desire of all teachers. So, welcome to game prototyping. This is one of my favorite classes to teach, which is why I'm like so amped up. I mean, I'm amped up when we do capstone too, but that's a very different course. This is like, you know, this is a really deep dive into some like specific topics that I really love and love sharing with people. So I'm excited. I'm always excited whenever we start this off because, you know, you're about to embark in game design how you may never have seen it before, but that I hope gives you some good new info to chew on and some good perspective for like if you become game designers the rest of your career. Hello people. Excited to have you here. So first of all, let's start with like, what is this class? What even is this class? So this class, like in every other class you take, you work on very big games and you work in very big engines. So big that like you have to spend the entire class learning about the engine. And I'm talking about Unity and Unreal. And that's not to say that's unique to Unity and Unreal. There were engines before that were like that. There are engines after that are like that. If you get a job in the game industry, the engines after that, you know, the engines that you're going to see are going to be like that. Because in the game industry, you know, I heard it phrased this way by a level designer, which was like, you're lucky if you're going to get out of school and work at your job in the engine that you actually learned in school. And that's because, you know, every studio uses a different engine. There's popular ones, but I always like to say there's no industry standard. Like industry standard is easier to say for like 3D. It's probably Max or Maya with Blender sprinkled throughout, but like becoming an increasing force finally. But then it's not like Photoshop where it's like, well, I need to edit photos. Well, get Photoshop. I need to do digital painting. Get Photoshop. It's not like there's one thing. Unity and Unreal are popular, but most studios still like roll their own engines. So in this landscape where this is the case, and I don't mean to scare anybody with that. What I mean to get across is that, games can be made out of anything. And, you're used to very big things. So what this class is about, it's about teaching you like really agile game development and a little bit in the production sense, but of the production system called agile. Really we use one more associated, one called Scrum. But in a very real sense, this course is about making small games in small tools. But the difference here is that these small tools are still things that independent creators can quickly and easily make games in. And it allow you to practice this craft in such a way that you're not really beholden to like the annoying parts of big production. And so, for example, like this is how I do a lot of my own independent development when I'm working by myself, or when I just want to make something real quick, or when I do a game jam, I'll reach for one of these types of tools. But beyond the tools themselves, because this isn't really a tools class, I'm not training you. My goal is not to train you for a tool, in Game Maker and Twine and other stuff. That's just kind of like a side benefit. The other thing that this class does is it makes you do quick, user-driven game design, cutting out all the crap of, again, annoying big, project realities. So I kind of liken it to, like, one thing that perfectly encapsulates how we do this course is like one of the first semesters I taught it back when I was at American University in DC, was we had a student say, well, can we make one big game throughout the entire course? And I said, no. And here's why, is that when you make one big game, you're going to fall in love with that big game, and you're going to polish it, and you're going to treat it very dearly, and you're going to not want anybody to hurt it. You're going to keep it very close to you, and you're going to be very scared to let others look at it. And you're going to think like, I don't really have a deadline here, so I could just keep tinkering at this thing until it's perfect. You know what those games are? They're never launched. Because people hold them back for too long. And your scope increases, and you get too many big ideas, and then you get too many features. What we want to look at is making really good, high-quality games, exercising the tools, like quick tools, and focusing on the tenets of really great game design. And then Yandere Simulator, I don't even know that one. I'll have to look that up. Or do I want to look it up? I don't know. But then the other thing you want to learn in this class is that, remember, we talked about those really big engines. When you make something in a really big engine, sometimes it gets in your way. Like, me and folks I'm working on a current project with right now, we're talking on Sunday, because that's when we have our weekly meetings. And we, we're making our game in Unity, and our programmer's like, I don't know how games are made in this piece of crap. And to give you some context, every engine is a piece of crap. They're all terrible. You just choose the one that interferes with you the least, kind of like 3D. And but we spend so much time just fighting Unity and all the little the little settings in the background of that particular engine. And again, the same happens in other engines too. I'm not just picking on Unity. But what you want when you make games, and this is why it's called game prototyping, if you have a game idea, you want it to be playable fast. And you want to be able to test if your idea is any good before you go and you waste all that time making something really big, if that makes sense. So, I said for the capstone students that were I was teaching just a few minutes ago, think about a 3D model, right? How much work goes into one 3D character? You have your model, your UVs, your textures, your rig, actually like connecting the rig to the model, and then animations, which are like lots and lots of work. So think about that, and think about putting that into a game. You've wasted all this time working on a 3D character when you don't even know if your game play is good. So that's what we're focusing on. We're focusing on making good gameplay quickly and making lots of little dirty mock-ups so that you can kill all the unfun, and then you can like dress it up and make the cool video game of your dreams. So beyond all that ranting, how is this class gonna happen? Well, this class focuses on, of course there's lectures and there's you learning game design, and that's usually going to happen during the first day of every week. So the first day of every week is your lecture day, and that in this case it's Tuesdays, and then for the Monday, Wednesday students it's Mondays. Then the second day is your group work time, and that is when you are going to get together with your group members and you are going to work on your projects. So some of you are wondering, how are we going to pick our groups? I'm actually going to assign that. I should no, you know what? We're gonna let me get back to you on how we are going to do this. I realize I need to make this decision in the next few hours, so I will. But let me come up with that is the one thing I had not set up before the class. I've set up everything else, but I will get back to you all with like how we're going to set up the groups. But so basically you have 3 projects, and second day of the week is going to be your group time. But these projects are going to each, again, show you a tool to make game prototypes with, but also challenge you to think about creative aspects of game making. Again, not just the software. You are going to be challenged to execute some aspect of capital G, capital D game design. Take that as you wish, whether or not you're, game design in caps, or if you thought I meant GD game design. It works both ways. So what are those 3 games? Well, the 3 games you're going to make are, the first one, and the one we're going to look at today, is I'm going to have you reverse engineer a level from a video game as a text adventure in a engine called Twine. And if you're like, oh my god, I have to learn 3 engines, Twine will take you like half an hour. And in fact, I'm going to make a tutorial video probably tomorrow and post it to my YouTube channel. And that will like walk you through what I expect, people to know how to do in Twine. It's very simple. The second project will be that you will create a narrative-based game in a engine called GB Studio. That stands for Game Boy Studio. And the narrative, the topic of the narrative is a trip to the store. So you are going to make a story-based game where you like walk around and do quests and talk to NPCs with the topic of going to the store. So I want to see like where you take that idea and how wacky it gets. And again, that's going to be in a tool that supports that kind of gameplay. But that's also going to teach you how to build interesting characters, how to, lay out quests, how to do some level design. We're going to look at how to build, levels that support a narrative type of adventure. And then you're also going to learn some art direction. You're also going to learn to work within limitations, which is really important in games. The problem with making a game, especially when you're a young designer in some of those big engines, is that you kind of have what is called blue sky, where it's like it's limitless possibilities. I'm giving you very strict limits, not just in my criteria, but also with the tools I've selected, so that you learn how to squeeze as much gameplay as you can out of small limits. And then the third project is it's a retro game project where your groups will draw. You'll draw names of consoles out of hats. Well, not out of a literal hat because we're not meeting in person. But your group will pick a random old video game console, and then you will be responsible for making a game that follows the technical limitations, like visually, of that console. I'm not going to like make you make a thing that actually functions on an old game system. But you have to like look at its screen resolution, its color palette. It's an art direction project. Your art style is limited by what the console is. So that's project 3. So your textbooks for the course are Tracy Fullerton Game Design Workshop, which is a like classic of the field. Like everybody who makes games needs to own this book. So now you hopefully do. And then another one called Game Design Vocabulary by Anna Anthropy and Naomi Clark. And that's a really great book that tackles a lot of really high-level game design concepts in like really quick, easy, accessible language that I refer to a lot. And I think forms a good basis for learning about, again, how to get lots of interesting things out of like very simple game design ideas, or very simply implemented games. Same thing with like, not that this class is about this, but the people that wrote that book in particular make games that are very personally expressive. And so a lot of that book is even talking about like how to address things that are personally expressive, or to make autobiographical or meaningful games. What we call in games for education class, transformational games. How to make those kind of things with very simple games. So again, not that this class is about that, but it could be something that you might find personal interest in. So it is about like, how do you really make some cool stuff with very simple games? Because if you can make very rich, simple games, and you can get into that mindset, you can make, you can do the same thing in a big environment, and you become that much of a better game developer. And then again, if you learn these prototyping tools, you can very easily prototype your big engine game idea quickly without having to, again, fight with Unreal or something like that to find out if your level design idea is even good. So that's why we do prototypes. And that's kind of what Game Design Workshop is all about. It's about the prototyping process. So your required software. So it's not a software course, but we are going to use software to enact our games. You're going to be creating a choose your own adventure game in Twine. Very simple. Last year, I remember, the class that I had for this project were at the point, like when we started Twine, they were super duper stressed and we're like, oh my gosh, I have to learn another piece of effing software. And I was like, no, give me like 20 minutes. I got you. And afterward, they were like, oh, that's it. Okay, fine. These are tiny tools. They are not, when I say game engine, and that's part of the reason this class exists, when I say game engine, people are like, this is not a Unity Unreal scale engine. And that's the point. The point is to show you that you can make things small and quick, and that is a really great way to practice this art. That's not, again, you have to make something big. Lots of really famous game developers make like little tiny games. So the second one is using GB Studio, which so I actually lied a little bit. I said, you don't have to be beholden to the actual capabilities of a target platform. GB Studio games can actually be exported onto a Game Boy, onto hardware. And I'm now kicking myself because I have a game I'm working on a Game Boy cartridge. I could have showed you, but I don't have it on me. And I don't think you want the dead air of me running to another room. But yeah, so you'll use that, and then you could even potentially launch to physical hardware with it. But the point of this engine is that it actually supports RPG style gameplay very easily. Not necessarily battle systems out of the box, but you can do quests and NPCs and top down RPG town style stuff out of the box. So that's what we're going to do. And then the third one we're going to use is Game Maker. And the reason we're using Game Maker is that Game Maker it's like the classic in the smaller 2D game engine world, and I liken it to GB Studios a little bit like this. It's like the newest of these kind of things, but things like Stencil is one that I haven't really heard about for a while. Construct is one where it's like no coding required, make a simple game out of these pre-canned game mechanics. You're not having to write game mechanics from scratch, but in so doing, you're also kind of assuming that you're going to make a platformer or a shooter or something like that. Game Maker is sort of like the great old one of this, that type of game engine. The simpler, no coding required, but you're not also making anything too big or inventive. The reason Game Maker stands out though is that you can either choose the no coding version or the simple scripting language, which is what we're going to use. And in doing the simple scripting engine called GML, you actually have, so Game Maker scales. So you can make the easy no coding game, or you can make something if you learn the scripting language, you can make whatever you want within reason, within the limits of the engine. And so to give you an idea of games that were made in Game Maker, you can make a little tiny game, but Undertale was made in Game Maker. Hyper Light Drifter was made in Game Maker. You all might not remember a fencing game called Nidhogg, but it was kind of a big deal a number of years ago as a multiplayer indie game. But very famous indie games were made in Game Maker. So it's a tool that actually does scale up, and you can use it in your career if you want to become an indie game developer. So easy to use, but lots of depth there. And then I also have a link here for Tabletop. Usually this class has a Tabletop project as number one, but I wasn't sure of how we could really effectively do that online in Teams without it becoming you have to learn Tabletop Simulator, and I don't like Tabletop Simulator very much. It's fine, it does what it does, but it's also kind of janky. So I just decided to not do the tabletop, which is very sad. I love doing the tabletop project, but I want to at least make sure that you had access to the tabletop thing if anybody wants to get into tabletop making. Any questions? I guess ask me 2 questions via the chat window before I move on. questions. When it comes to Game Maker Studio, are there going to be any limitations to the demo that we use? If it's a free trial, will we have to wait to download it? Oh, okay. Thank you for asking that, because that is a reminder for me to tell you that our school has seats for Game Maker. We bought seats for Game Maker, so we will, when it's Game Maker time, be distributing logins for you to use. So you do not have to like wait to do a strategically try to only have it for a free period. Yeah, we made sure we bought seats for this. Thank you for reminding me to talk about that. That's super helpful. So yeah, we have seats for that, and you'll be set up. What I typically recommend, so I've said this, all the projects are going to be in groups. They're going to be in groups of increasing size. So the first one is 2 people. The second one is like a 3-person group. And then, the final project is like 4 to 5 because it's a more complex game. Usually what I advise people to do is maybe, have only 1 or 2 people in the group. Actually do the Game Maker depending on how many seats are needed. I'm pretty sure we have enough seats, but I'll let you know. But there does tend to be like a difference in how many people are actually getting their hands into the engine. That was a great question. Okay, one more question, then I'll move on. I'm also going to try to blow through some of this because, again, the desire to actually talk about something that's not the syllabus. One more question. Come on, you can do it. If there's only a certain amount of people who will use Game Maker, will everybody still be able to learn the basics of it? That was a great question. There are assignments based on doing tutorials. There are also tutorial videos and things. So, you will still have... Really what I meant by there are only a certain amount of people who will use it, I mainly mean in terms of team planning. So not everybody is necessarily going to be the programmer. One of you might be like, I'm going to do the art or something like that. So maybe your time is spent more in Sprite than necessarily in Game Maker. You are all, as part of the course, doing... Like, I actually have some pre-made Game Maker tutorial videos that you will do. So, yeah, I hope that helps. So I should say, and again, in the spirit of sort of like the quick aspects of this and trying things out, because that's what this class is about. It's like, make something quick, try out ideas quickly. That's what this is. And I always get asked, like, well, how good does the game have to look before you should show it to people? Like it's put together with duct tape and bubble gum and doesn't have any art. Like the idea of game prototyping, like rapid prototyping, is that you make it quick. It doesn't have to be pretty, but you get it in front of somebody to test. And that might be within your group. That might be, in a non-COVID world, like you could take your laptop to the middle of the dining hall and be like, I made a video game, come play my video game. And then somebody might actually stop. It could be like your friends and family. that's you want to get it in front of people so you can understand and if people respond to your game well. And again, doesn't have to be pretty yet. It just has to exist. If we were doing tabletop, a good example would be like you'd get a Sharpie marker and some index cards and write down the cards of your game on that, and then you'd play the game. Like just quick and dirty. And in the spirit of this kind of game design, what I also recommend to people is that this is a great class for trying out different roles in a game team. Some of you, like most of the people in this class, are from our program who are artists. We also have some guests from computer science. Hi, guests from computer science. Excited to have you. Thank you for coming. But you might think like, oh, I want to be the artist all the time. Well, if you're making a little game, maybe you try doing sound for a game. Maybe I've seen tons of people. I've had like lots of students go through this particular class, and because again, I've been teaching this for like years and years, who never did sound, realized that they like it a lot, and then that's what they went off and did. Or pixel art or, something. And then they find their niche here because they're open to trying new things. So again, try new things. This is what the class is about. Okay, so that being said, that was our 2 questions. Going down the list. Final exam schedule. Your final projects are due at 11:59 p.m. on the day of your final exam. That's project 3. I included a link to the final exam schedule for the spring. I also put the final exam dates and times for each section on the syllabus. So please refer to the syllabus, because I always get like, when is our final exam? It's on the syllabus. What are the due dates? They're on the syllabus. They're also on Blackboard. I made assignments for everything you have to do with due dates and times. Usually it's like due the Thursday of that week that it's due at 11:59 p.m. So you have like up until, right before midnight to turn it in on the Thursday of whatever week it's due. That's, those are all on Blackboard. So, before you ask about like due dates, go check those sources because that's where they are. Assume you're going to spend like 6 to 9 hours outside of the class working on stuff. And I say that, one, because that's what all 3 credit hour courses are supposed to be. And I understand that that's a great theory, but it always bumps up against reality. I would say give yourself enough time to be able to like make your stuff, and so that you don't end up crunching. Because if you make things a little bit at a time instead of trying to crunch in a day or a week or something, then you're going to have a better time with the projects. And especially since like, if you put a lot into these projects, like you can actually get a lot out. Like we've had students take their projects from this course and then go and submit them to festivals and then get into the festivals. So, I like give yourself the time to make something awesome is what I would say. So I am also going to say that this is not explicitly a training course, but we are training in a few pieces of software. There are going to be a few things that you may not have used before that won't be given super explicit lessons that are still going to be like, really I'm talking about itch.io, which is a website where you're going to be turning in your stuff. There's not enough class time for everything we have to learn to do like an itch tutorial. Basically, it's a website where you can like sign up, make a profile, and then to make a game page, you just like click on your profile, and then you can like, in the menu that drops down, you can add a game, and then in adding a game, you just fill out a little form, and then, you save your game, and then you make it public, and there it is. So, those are going to be things where it's like, this is simple enough for a most of you are juniors, junior level person to understand in a techie kind of program. So like, just please take the time to if you have trouble, you're free to ask me questions, but just don't be upset if like there isn't tutorials on some of those little things. Otherwise we would never cover some of the stuff we have to cover. Please take notes. Please take notes. I've also provided the slides for every lecture on Blackboard, but also please take notes. Sometimes you're going to run into errors where the instructor is going to scratch their head and be like, how did you do that? Just be ready for some of those. So basically what this means is like, if there is a tutorial, carefully follow the steps of the tutorial and also refer to any online documentation for software, because sometimes the answer to problems is in there. I've also had things where, so I'm referring to this part of the syllabus that says unknown existential errors, which is my word for like when something is so messed up, I don't even like, I walk up and I go, how'd you get that? Which happens a lot. Usually the source is like, just make sure you carefully follow all the steps of things. The other thing I would say is that if you are having problems with software, usually what'll happen is, if I've never seen it before, my first step is to go to, I kid you not, Google, and then I will search for the name of the software and then the thing it's doing or not doing. And then what I'll be looking for is a forum post on the relevant forum for the software I'm trying to do, to see if other people have had that problem. That way, really what I'm trying to head off at the pass is like the software getting in the way of us actually talking about like the game design we have to talk about. So, please take these steps. Again, I'm happy to help, but I also want to encourage like learning how to find these things so that we can like, we're talking less about software and we're talking more about like, hey, isn't it interesting that narrative is dealt with this way in games? Because that's what I really want to like explore with all of you throughout this. The rest is pretty much boilerplate. Okay, so you might be seeing language about remote learning in your syllabi this semester that defines like tier 1 and tier 2, and we would technically be a tier 2 course, but it has this thing where it says like the first, you're remote until February 1st. No, we are remote. That's it. We're remote. Don't go to a space. We're remote. Stay safe. Okay? So please know that about this course. Don't go to a room. Stay at home and be safe. Any questions about that? Any questions about any of this? Nope. I'm going to keep going, and I'll watch the chat. Okay. So, the last thing we really need to cover, what is that line there? That's weird. Huh. The last thing I want to cover is like, I'm just going to do a quick summary of the syllabus, not the syllabus, the schedule, and what the schedule, so all of this is in Blackboard. All of the assignments are transcribed onto Blackboard with like due dates and points. I've made sure that the points match what's in this syllabus document. All the readings are linked there. I'm always asked, do I need to buy the textbooks? I am not quizzing you on any of this material, but the textbooks, especially if you are wanting to get into game design, the textbooks are things that I highly recommend for your personal professional library. I have my copies of them right there. And like I said, game design or Game Design Workshop is like one of the best games about, or one of one of the best books about game design ever written. Everybody should have it. And again, hopefully now you do too. I'm a big advocate for game design vocabulary. I think it's a great book. I've used it for years. I think it's fantastic. So am I quizzing you? No. In that way, you could sneak by if you wanted to with not owning the book. And I understand for some people that runs into like economic concerns. But, these are my recommendations for you. And the chapters in the book that are the required reading for that week are like the wisdom. They're chosen because they are like wisdom for the step of the project or the place in the course where you're at. So that's why they're there. So like skim the readings. You might find something that is really informative. I've had in other classes people be like, I started reading the textbook and wow. I'm like, So please give it a look. The other thing is I usually share a bunch of, again, related readings or industry websites or writings that, again, will illuminate the topic that we have at hand. So please read them. They will make you a better game designer. This along with like just making a ton of games, because that's how you become a better game designer. Ultimately, make a ton of stuff. And that's why this is a class about quick games instead of big games. So if you only try to make big games, you may never make one. But if you make lots of little games, then eventually you'll be able to make, bigger and bigger things faster and faster. Project 1 distributed. I'm going to show you Project 1. You have access, by the way, to all of this material already. You have access to look at all the project briefs. So I have briefs for each project so that you can easily see what the ins and outs of every project are. So Project 1 is due the week of February 8th. And what I usually do is I'll have each group sign up for a time. And then what we'll do is we'll just have in Discord or something, like everybody does, okay, now it's so-and-so's turn to stream, and then your group streams. And you'll stream you're turning in projects by group. So once I, release the mechanism for which we will be in groups, we just need one of the members of the group to host the stream, and then you'll show off your work. So those are due the week of February 8th. And again, you'll be presenting during your class periods. February 15th, we are going to start Project 2, which is the narrative game in GB Studio. We're going to be looking at a lot of narrative games and really discussing how story works with games for that period. March 8th, that's when we're gonna start talking about game engine, the game engine for Game Maker for Project 3. So the topic is usually a week ahead of what's due, what's due the following week. So week of March 15th is when Project 2 is due. And again, stream on Discord, screen share by group, and you're going to show off your game. And then Project 3 is distributed the week of March 22nd. That's usually when GDC is, but GDC has been moved to the summer this year. That's also usually around the time spring break is. So there's just a gap in the content. Rather than move the content around, what I did is I'm going to try to get guest speakers for my classes that week. So we'll see, what I can wrestle up. But my anticipation is that we'll have somebody come and talk to you about game making. So the rest of the semester is going to be based on doing the final project, which will be due finals week. And format TBA, it might be another streaming thing. We'll see if I have it in me at that point to try to do anything bigger. But your finals for each section are due. There is a 071, that's the honors section. You're just lumped. You share a time with 070. So just FYI. spring break, remember, is April 12th through 18th. This year it's later. So look over of topics. I mean, you can read these, but like basic game production, core mechanics. So this is a lot of game design-y type stuff. So this is like the principles and theories of game design, but like applicable theory, not like game studies theory, but designing games around narrative. What is interactive narrative? How do you tell stories with game elements? How do you work with historic precedents, and how do you do art direction? Level design. We study level design a lot. I have actually 2 level design lectures I can give. Sometimes I slip in an extra one because I know some of you take this while you're taking environmental, and I know that folks come out of that like really wanting more level design, really hungry for more. So I'm like, hey, I know about level design. So I'm happy to share that. And then we also talk about like what those who've had me know that I don't like to teach for this to be homework. So like, you're not turning in your games via Blackboard where only I will see them. You're turning it on itch. Now, you can set an itch page to private if you don't want the world to see it. You have that right, by law, actually. But, we're going to use itch.io as a mechanism to turn in projects. And the purpose of that is that now you have a thing that you could turn to public viewing, and then people can look at your work and then be like, hey, awesome work. And then by the end of this class, you'll have like 3 games on this page. And, it can suddenly become like, you're a game designer with a history of released games. Like when you post it for public consumption, you've released a game. That's it. That's the hurdle, right? That's the scary thing. Or not the scary thing, but like the thing that everybody wants and dreams about doing. It doesn't require you to go slave away to try to get a job at a big studio and then get crunched into oblivion to make rocks to get your name and then like to stay on till the end of the project to get your name in the credits. Like, you don't have to do that to have a game in your release, like on your resume. You can just release a game. You can make and release a game. So that's what this is about. And, we have a topic at the end where we talk about like, okay, now you made a game. Now what are you going to do with it? And that's where we talk about like, do you want to submit it to a show? Do you want to show it at a booth? Do you want to, sell it to people? Here's how to do those things. So we cover everything, and the class topics likewise do all that stuff. Okay. Any questions there? Okay, so real quick, project 1. What you are going to do is you are going to sorry, I'm pausing because I started thinking about how I'm going to assign groups. What I might do is I usually randomly assign groups. I think I know how I can do that. It should actually be pretty simple. So I'm going to likely do that. I'll just like make something in Excel real quick, and then, so you'll be paired with somebody for this. And I can do that like immediately after class, so nobody's confused. But, so project 1 is you are going to actually a lot of the projects this semester are based on level design. So again, if you want extra level design content, some of them are actually pretty level design heavy, even though it might not seem like it. So what you're going to do is we're going to really try to strip games down into, I guess, the language that we use to talk about them. That sounds really weird when I say it out loud, but the first project of this course is you're going to pick a level from a video game that you like. And it can be any level, any genre too. Like the ones that are immediately going to come to mind are going to be like, RPGs or something like that, because, that very much fits the format of a text adventure. But I want you to really think abstractly. I want you to be able to think about, like, when you're playing a shooter, when you play Doom Eternal, like when you are in one of those kill arenas, what is going through your head? What are the calculations you make? And what happens when you choose the right or the wrong thing? Because, like, I know that whenever I'm struggling with one of the fights in that game, I always think, like, if I had gone to that platform instead of that platform and gotten the health pack, or gotten the drop on this enemy instead of that enemy, I could have gotten through this. And I want you to think about, like, playing games in that way, and then I want you to translate that into a choose your own adventure. So you're going to take a level that you like, and you're going to reverse engineer it into, like, what you think about when you make a game, and turn that into a choose your own adventure with Twine. So again, the recommended software is Twine. I've had people say, well, can I make my narrative game in RenPy or something else? Sure. Just know that if it's something that's not that, I might not know it. So be forewarned. But I've also had really great games come out of that. So, weigh your options there. But I want you to think of the level ultimately as a set of spaces. So there's a great Twine game, and it's on here as a recommended resource, called The Uncle Who Works at Nintendo. And you can actually, there's a logic to how, like, when you're in one room, you can go to another room and another room and another room. And if you were to draw it out, it would become a map. And that's what I want you to get into in this, is, like, start to think about gameplay and map making, and the logic of, like, decision making and things like that. Because then you'll start to form, like, this sort of abstract mental map of video games, and you'll start to talk about, like, information, decisions, resources, pathways, all this stuff that goes into actually the experience of moment by moment playing a video game. So that's what you're doing. You're reverse engineering a level into a text adventure. So what are you doing? You're exploring this concept of the game. You're going to test this. You're going to test this with, like, group members, family members who are around, roommates, whoever you have, again, safely access to. This is also why putting up prototypes on something like Itch can be very good, because then you can send the link to somebody and then get their feedback. So that's why, again, Itch and similar, Steam Early Access. That's why this is a great idea, so that you can actually, like, get people to test and collect feedback. And then again, we're just going to use this as a means to, like, explore, game design down to its bare bones elements. Requirements for the game. Game must be based on a level from a popular game. Please don't only default to, like, if I get, 20 Skyrim levels, that 20 parts of Skyrim, that would get kind of monotonous. So, like, try to really think about, like, somebody who does this and maybe makes, like, a choose your own adventure Super Mario Brothers you will be, expressing very different things than somebody that thinks about, The Witcher. But they might also be equally exciting, because it'd be like, well, do you jump on the block, or do you, jump on the Goomba, things like that. That could also like really show you cool things about game design by like thinking about an action game or something like that. So try to, when you are doing this, like try to abstract it enough that you're not. I wrote this down where it's like, you may not use non-public domain intellectual property. Yeah, because you're going to be putting it up on itch. You're going to tell me what game it's based on, but you don't want to post it online as being like Super Mario Brothers but in Twine, if that makes sense, because I don't want anybody's game to get taken down. So, let's talk about it internally as like based on the thing, but try to give it your own narrative wrapping, if that makes sense, so that you're not violating anybody's intellectual property. So yeah, general structure to give you some ideas, like each scene of Twine should be used to like, this is where you either choose to jump on the Goomba or on the block, or this is where you like, you see this enemy, what do you do? So that's how I would structure it to give it some like less abstract. Nintendo ninjas will come for you. Yes, they will. Somebody asks, are we meeting on Thursdays as well? Unless otherwise noted, no, because I want to keep the Thursdays open for you and your groups to get together and actually build, like work on these prototypes. Because this is like a project course, and I don't want to make all the project work external. I want to be able to, let you have some time. Try to pay attention to your pacing. Some of these are just like honestly tips for making this a good project. So if anybody's ever played Dead Space, I love Dead Space, but like, man, those games are exhausting because they just keep hitting you with stuff. Or at least Dead Space 2 did. Dead Space 1 would have like, fight a thing, walk around quietly while still being kind of spooked. And that contrast let you, like, the game felt better with contrast. Dead Space 2 was like, fight, and it was like an exhausting game to play emotionally, just because you're like you're amped up the whole time. So think about pacing when you do this. Playable for at least 5 minutes. Variables may be used in Twine's simple scripting language to make gameplay more interesting. I'm not requiring it, but you may use it. You may use some screenshots or some representations, but again, be careful to not violate IP. Art aesthetics do not need to be final. So like, yeah, you can read the rest, but I also include suggested resources to look through, to learn about like this type of level design. And then really what I want you to think about is, don't think about levels as 3D space necessarily. I mean, don't think of them only as 3D models and BSP brushes. I want you to think about how space is arranged and what people think about as they interact with a game space. And that stuff that they think about includes enemy placement, it includes their resources that they have on hand at one time. And I want you to focus on, how do you create interesting moment-to-moment gameplay? Because even down moments can be incredibly rich of like, well, do I want to go that way? Do I want to go that way? Do I want to go that way? Like, oh, there's an interesting thing over there. How am I going to get there? And sometimes waiting and relaxing in a game can actually be as rich and rewarding as like, the fight scene. So, I want you to think about those things. I don't know. Any questions about this for the project one? Again, this prompt is in Blackboard, so you have access to actually read through it yourselves. When will we know our groups? Yeah, tonight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through. Basically, I'm going to put the class rosters like on an Excel spreadsheet. I'm just going to get them to randomize, and then I'll line everybody up. The reason I do it random instead of letting everybody pick is that I know it's going to sound it sounds counterintuitive, but I've actually observed that random groups work better than non-random groups, because if you work with your friends but then the project goes badly, you're less likely to call each other out. So again, I've done studies on this, but just like based on years of teaching, that is what I have observed. So I'm a big believer in randomized groups. Also, I will say this. Now, traditionally, like if this were a in-person class, what I usually do is I have the groups at the end of every assignment do. Somebody says it really well here. We always don't get to work with people we know. Yes, exactly. You nailed it. One thing that I usually do in the real world version of this class is I have like group evals where everybody does an evaluation of each other's group members. But I don't do that in this scenario because we are still in a pandemic and nobody is at their best. I am not at my best. You are not at your best. We're not all at their best. So I do, try to be forgiving and good to each other, because you don't necessarily know everything that's happening to everybody. So, I know it can be super frustrating, but like, yeah, like we're all trying to land this plane together. Oh no, not an imposter among us. Hi, person. Yeah, it is actually. This is one of my classes that I do at Kent State in Ohio. But hello, person, who popped in to say hello. You're welcome to listen to me talk about design if you'd like. Okay. Well, so real quick, I want to go over some quick things regarding prototyping, and then we can get out of here. But if you do have a question, I will answer it in the chat. So one thing I do want to talk about is game production methods, and we're not going to talk about them too much just because we only have 15 minutes left, but if we can get through this, you might be more informed about how we're going to proceed. So first of all, I didn't properly introduce myself to everybody. Hi, I'm Chris. You can call me Chris. I'm an assistant professor in our animation game design program, which is now a full Bachelor of Science degree, which is great. That certainly took long enough. So this is my slide where I introduce myself to give you some context of who I am and where I'm coming from. And also, like I said, you don't know it. Most of you only are going to interact with me in classes. But I always like to remind people, I'm like, hey, here's what my job fully entails. So if I'm late getting to your email, here's why. So I'm what's called a tenure track professor, which means that I am responsible for, I am on the path to get what's called tenure, which is just like, sort of long-term employment in the university. So the university has made a commitment to me, but in doing so, I have to do a lot of different things beyond just teaching. So I teach, and that is about like 60% of what my expected duties are. But I also am responsible for research. Now that research takes the form of game production and also writing about game design. And so I make games. I've made lots of games, over 20 since 2006. Probably need to update that number actually, because I've made more. I can't stop myself. I've made commercial games, mostly in the mobile, indie, and tabletop spaces. I released a game commercially, actually as recently as 2019, called La Mancha, which is a tabletop storytelling game based on the novel Don Quixote. I am currently working on a game called Little Nemo and the Nightmare Fiends, which interestingly enough, and I say this not to promote it, so let me be clear. If I talk about games I make, I don't do that in classes to promote them because that's icky. But I usually will use examples from games I've made because I made them and can tell you about the thought process that went into them. But you are going to get to see an interesting thing. This is kind of an experiment for me. I've done Kickstarters before, but usually when I do Kickstarters during semesters, I don't talk about them because, again, not wanting to raise the specter of self-promotion. I'm usually like, oh yeah, I do Kickstarter. Yeah, it's over there if you want to see. I'm actually going to be more explicit in talking about it and how it's going this semester, simply because I want, again, you want to get into the game industry. You should be given opportunities to see things happen in the game industry. A big thing is I'm going to be doing a big thing that is in the game industry later this semester starting March 2nd. So I want to use that as an opportunity to like talk about real time what it means to make and promote a game. So that's how we're going to do this. So yeah, you'll get to see that later on. Again, not doing it as a promotional thing, more experimenting it with it as like real-time case study. Because it could totally bomb, but I will talk to you. We can talk about like the lessons of what went right, what went wrong of a bomb, right? So I wrote a book about level design. I actually published 2 books about level design. One was that book that's on the slide. The other is a book of essays by industry people. And then I've founded some indie game festivals. I've also done a bunch of other stuff, but like it's only one slide. But so that's where I'm coming from. So I'm big on indie, big on like working with small groups. I'm big on community building because I used to be the head of an IGDA chapter, International Game Developer Association chapter. And I like to work with communities. I like to help build community within my classroom. Promoting things like the Global Game Jam, which you should all go to this year. It's going to be held online. And then, I'm big into game production. And like I said, really thinking about design and how to make better games through focusing on not only game design, but the design of other media types. So real quick, like I said, what is this class about? Well, it's about iteration, and iteration is kind of a science. We can kind of like loosely say, oh yeah, I'm going to make a game and I'm going to work on my game and then I'm going to show up next week with my game and it'll be in what form it's in. But if you know how to iterate and how to prototype, it can actually have great impact on like the quality of your work in both big and small. So like this class is about small, making lots of small things. But then if you take this idea to other classes, let's say your environmental game design classes. Now, I know that like that has a set of homeworks and expectations and things like that, but I know like in the field, level design is usually done by, you will not see a piece of environment art touch that environment for a long time. And you get what's called gray boxing, which is like, let's make the quickest, dirtiest level out of gray boxes, literal gray boxes. But then sometimes they color code the boxes to be like, oh, the floor is lava or something. But you'll make it out of boxes and then you play it and then you see if it's good. And then you get rid of the parts that aren't good. And then you play test again and then you change it a little bit. And then you play test again, you change it a little bit. And then you find yourself changing less, or the things that you do change are like smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where the level's pretty good and then you can add all the pretty art. That's what iterating is. It's making something quick and dirty, testing, making something quick and dirty but a little better, testing it, making a little better, testing it, make a little better, testing it, finishing. And that's what we do. We plan it, we build it, analysis and design. You red arrow test it. You evaluate the outcomes of that test, and then you see what you need to do next time. Yellow arrow, analysis and design testing. So you kind of go around in circles until it's ready to actually be implemented or deployed. So it's cyclical. You see this a lot in software development, but at the center of this spiral here, that's when you're iterating on like, what does it need to be? You're iterating ideas, and you have like early concepts. So maybe this is a paper prototype or like a twine prototype or something super simple. One of my former students worked with us in the internship course this past summer, and we gave him like some UI design to do, user interface design for Nemo, and he sent us a twine, and we're like, yes, in doing twine as a interface design prototype, amazing. But it was great, and he didn't have to like go fight Unity's UI tools. He was just like, well, what do you think? And we're like, this gives us a perfect idea of what the menu system for the game looks like, and it gave us something implementable without a lot of fuss. So that's where you're working in the middle, and you're like trying these things out, and as you iterate, you're moving out in this spiral, but your prototypes are becoming more and more concrete, more and more like the final thing. So again, you're usually going through steps of conceptualizing. This is where you get a one sheet, concept art, elevator pitches. Then you're trying out like basic prototypes, some cards. Now these are all actually like, that is a card game. It's not a dirty prototype. That's actually one of my near final ones, but it's a good prototyping picture. But you try to make your design in as quick a way as possible. So this is the paper prototype, the test scene in a game project, gray box, whatever it might be. Testing, put it in front of a carbon-based life form and see what happens. See where they're confused, see where they are having fun, see what they like, see what they dislike. You want to kill the unfun. But in order to kill the unfun, you've got to find the unfun. And you're a terrible judge of where the unfun in your own project is. Not saying you as a person, but any designer. And it is your baby. You will be biased. You're also going to be really good at your own game by the time that you're if anybody's ever seen the movie Tron, where Jeff Bridges is hustling people at his own arcade because his arcade is full of people, or full of games that he programmed, you're going to be that. So you're actually a terrible judge of how good your game is. You need other people. So always get other people. Stand at that booth. Put out the thing on itch. That's how you get testing. Harangue your friends and family. In non-COVID times, go yell at strangers in the dining hall and be like, I made a video game. Come play my video game because it's my homework. Why not? You can do that. But then when you do that, you say to yourself, oh, everybody had trouble with this. So what can we do to fix it? Oh, maybe we need to add a new feature. Development structures, waterfall, agile, and scrum. I'm not going to go because there's like 3 minutes left. Waterfall is basically what I want to avoid here. I don't like waterfall. It works for some types of software, but it's not going to work for this, because this is so based on user feedback and like making users happy. Waterfall is where you kind of like from one in a straight line. I have an idea. I'm going to write out what my idea how it should be implemented. I'm going to implement my idea. I'm going to test it, and then I'm going to release it. That's the entire production cycle. What you get with games with waterfall type production is that at that verification step, that's when you realize your game idea sucks. You don't want that. You want it to like happen as soon as you can, and that's why we make quick and dirty prototypes. So I don't do waterfall for game development, and almost nobody I know does waterfall for game development unless they're like making just an add-on, where it is like, I know this is already good because it's the sequel, so I'm just gonna shove it through. Agile, you don't need to know all this. This is just the Agile manifesto. I just wanted you to know that it has a manifesto. But what Agile is, and it's actually related to another thing called Scrum that we are going to do. So it's not this kind of Scrum. It's actually named after this kind of Scrum, which is rugby. It's not Scum. It's an old gaming reference you probably don't get. But the way Scrum works is that you have a list of features and you put that in what's called a backlog. You take the feature that you want to work on, and then you like get your team, and then you like at regular intervals meet and iterate, which is what we are doing. So we are doing every week as a sprint. And what you're doing is week by week, you're saying this week we're going to work on this. You spend the week working on it, then we get together every Tuesday or Thursday, and you meet with your team. So this would be Thursdays, I guess. And you meet with your team and you say, okay, where are we? Let's test it. And then see if it worked, what didn't work. And then you go and you say, I'm going to do this week. I'm going to do this week. You do that this week. You go, you sprint for the week, and then you iterate again. So that's what Scrum is about. Again, I'm going to let you read this in the project notes because we only have now left. And then here's just some stats based of like, a few things. Projects do better when they take less time. So here's some data from Gamasutra, which is an industry site. So this is why we learn to make games fast, is because, the chances of your game, so this is based on Metacritic scores, but projects with more like well-managed production have better Metacritic scores because you are managing them better and you're not letting the production get out of hand. Team size, like now we're working on small teams, but team size, like divide and conquer basically. Now here you're forced to divide and conquer on small games, so the team size matches what you can like produce with each project type. But I know for those of you that I have in Capstone, this is why I beg you to work in teams, because your chances of success go better when you have a bigger team on big projects. Experience, again, so this is why we make lots of little games. This is why we make lots of prototypes and lots of games, because if you are trying to make that big dream game as your number one game, I realize we're a little over. Thank you for staying around. I'm almost done. If you're trying to make that big dream game as game number one for yourself, it's not going to be as good as you want it to be because you are inexperienced. I have a friend who set out to make 100 games in 5 years, and he did it. And a bunch of them were really tiny, but they were games and they were released. And what happened was a few of them in there became actually kind of big hits. And the games that like you start getting into the 80s and 90s of this 70s, 80s and 90s of this journey, the games became bigger and bigger in scope because he just got more experience and could make bigger things faster. That's why you make lots of little games, because then you'll eventually, the thing that will be a short game for you would have been like unreachable, at this stage when you're a student. So like, let's make lots of little games. And then eventually you'll be these like, game development gods and goddesses. Engine doesn't really matter. Really all that matters here is that like what this shows is that if you're familiar with the engine, you're going to be better at making games in it. So, but engines do not inherently have quality. If anybody's like, but Unreal's better, and you're like getting all console war fanboy about Unity or Unreal, they don't matter. What matters is you, game designer, and your knowledge of game design. Production method technically doesn't matter, but waterfall is the worst, is what that shows. And then that's it. The last point was saying like, usually it works better if you have a dedicated role, but if you're on a small team, you don't often have that luxury, so be open to having other roles. I was once the lead of the sound team because I had sound people's emails. So I was the head of the sound team on the game. Guess how good that sound was. I don't know. Any other questions before I let you go? Well, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it. Yes, Global Game Jam. I'm going to... real quick, there, okay. Wait, no, I want to put this here. Why is that so big? Ah, there it goes. So the question was, are non-Kent State students allowed to register for Global Game Jam? I don't think there's any impediment to them not. Like, I don't have anything on this page that checks for their Kent State email. So to give you an idea, usually the reason that we don't allow people at our like physical sites for Global Game Jam. By the way, Global Game Jam, it's a limited time game making event taking place between the 27th and 31st of January. You get together you form a team and you make a game based on a theme. It's a really awesome industry event. I recommend everybody go because it's just fantastic, and you get to make a game. Like, hey, let's put this on our portfolio, make a game. So you can make 4 this semester. But the other cool thing about Global Game Jam is that it's a great networking opportunity, and it's a great like experience. So you're gonna see like cool you're gonna see cool like speeches by game industry professionals and stuff like that. To answer the question though, usually the reason we don't allow non-Kent students is for insurance liability purposes. If something were to happen to somebody who was not one of our students, they could sue Kent State. I mean, you could probably technically could sue Kent State if you are a student, but it's just a liability thing. That is a murky thing when you are all going to be in your own spaces. So I think I'm technically supposed to be like, oh, we advise not to do that, but you're adults and you could probably make your own decisions. So yeah, just be careful with it because that could get into some gray areas. Yeah. To give you an idea, like, it's not outside the realm of of possibility that like me and my daughter might be jamming together, and she's not a Kent State. Well, she technically goes to the Child Development Center, so still, and like it's supposed to be for 18 plus, and she's not 18, so yeah. Some of these things are a little murky. All right. I'm also going to be in Discord. So if anybody has any other questions, I will be available there to answer. But thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.